Judge's Gambit. The neon dragons coiled around the Golden Palace Casino like electric serpents, red and gold and green against the Macau night. Brill Wingfield stepped out of the taxi into air thick with humidity and diesel fumes, the kind of atmosphere that made everything feel like it was happening underwater. Across the street, the Cote Strip blazed with enough light to be seen from orbit. Judge Chen Wei-Ming owned the Golden Palace the way other men owned watches, completely, quietly, and with the understanding that it represented more than its apparent value. For 30 years, Chen had sat on Macau's court of final appeal, making decisions that shaped the territory's relationship with Beijing and Washington. For 20 of those years, he'd been selling those decisions to the highest bidder. Carver's voice buzzed through the earpiece. Target hasn't left the casino in 6 months. Lives on the top floor, works from his private office, takes his meals in the Penthouse restaurant. His food taster is a former chemist from Beijing University. Natural causes, Brill said, walking through the casino's main entrance. That's what the contract specified. Stress-induced cardiac event. Chen's got a family history of heart problems, plus he's been popping antacids like candy. Ulcers from 30 years of judicial corruption tend to do that. The casino floor hit Brill like a physical force. Slot machines chimed and rang in electronic harmony. Baccarat tables drew crowds of men in expensive suits, throwing around money like confetti. The air conditioning carried the scent of cigarettes and desperation, and the particular kind of sweat that came from watching your life savings disappear on the turn of a card. Brill moved through the gaming floor toward the high-limit area. Chen's private elevator was back there, behind a velvet rope and 2 security guards who looked like they bench-pressed small cars for recreation. "Sir," one of the guards said in Cantonese, "this area is for VIP members only." Brill smiled and pulled out a thick roll of Hong Kong dollars. "I'm looking to become a member." Money talked in every language. The guard's partner made a phone call. Rapid Cantonese mixed with the sounds of slot machines and distant laughter. After a minute, he nodded. "Mr. Liu will see you," the first guard said. Penthouse level. The private elevator was all mirrors and gold trim, the kind of ostentatious display that screamed new money and old insecurities. It climbed past the gaming floors, past the hotel levels, past the restaurant and conference areas, all the way to the penthouse where Judge Chen Wei-Ming held court like a feudal lord. The doors opened to reveal a reception area that looked like it had been decorated by someone who thought subtlety was a form of weakness. Ming Dynasty vases, jade sculptures, calligraphy scrolls that probably cost more than most people's houses. A receptionist sat behind a desk that could have doubled as a small aircraft carrier. "Mr. Liu will see you now," she said in accented English. Liu turned out to be a thin man in an expensive suit who moved like a dancer and spoke like a diplomat. He led Brill through a maze of corridors lined with artwork that belonged in museums. "You're interested in our private gaming opportunities," Liu said. "May I ask what brings you to Macau?" "Business," Brill said. "Import-export. Sometimes you need to entertain clients in a more exclusive environment." They passed a series of private gaming rooms where men and women in evening wear played cards with chips worth more than luxury cars. Through one doorway, Brill caught a glimpse of Judge Chen Wei-Ming himself, a heavy-set man in his 70s wearing judicial robes like they were casual wear. He was reviewing documents while a younger man in a lab coat stood nearby, obviously the food taster. "The judge prefers to work while he plays," Liu said, noticing Brill's attention. "A man of remarkable discipline." They reached a smaller gaming room, set up for baccarat. Liu explained the membership fees, the credit requirements, the discreet services available to discerning clients. Brill nodded and asked appropriate questions while studying the security cameras, the exit routes, the patterns of movement through the penthouse. "I'll need to think about it," Brill said after 20 minutes of discussion. "Of course. Please, enjoy our hospitality while you consider." Liu left him alone in the gaming room. Brill waited 60 seconds, then slipped out into the corridor. The penthouse was a maze, but mazes had patterns. Kitchen areas, staff quarters, service elevators, utility rooms, every building had the same basic anatomy. He found a service corridor behind the main reception area. Plain white walls, industrial lighting, the utilitarian spaces where the real work happened. A laundry cart sat unattended near a freight elevator. Brill grabbed a maintenance uniform from the cart and changed quickly. The freight elevator took him up one more floor to the judge's private residence. More corridors, more cameras, but maintenance workers were invisible in places like this. He pushed the laundry cart through the penthouse like he'd been doing it for years. Judge Chen's private office was at the end of the hall, behind double doors that probably cost more than most people's cars. Brill knocked and waited. "Come in." The office looked like a law library had exploded inside a museum. Legal texts in Chinese and English covered every wall. The judge sat behind a desk the size of a small island, reading documents while his food taster prepared tea on a side table. "Maintenance," Brill said in broken Cantonese. "Air conditioning inspection." The judge barely looked up. "Make it quick." Brill moved to the air conditioning unit, built into the wall behind the judge's desk. The taster continued preparing tea, with the focused attention of someone who understood that a single mistake could be fatal. The tea service was elaborate. Porcelain cups, silver spoons, a jade pot that probably belonged in a museum. The taster went through his ritual like a priest conducting mass. First, he prepared the tea in the jade pot. Then he poured it into 2 cups, one for the judge, one for himself. He drank from his cup first, waited 30 seconds for any adverse reactions, then offered the other cup to the judge. 30 seconds. That was the window. Brill worked on the air conditioning unit while watching the taster's routine. The man was methodical, professional, but he had one weakness. He was performing a ritual. Rituals created patterns, and patterns created vulnerabilities. The taster finished his tea and offered the second cup to the judge. Chen accepted it without looking up from his documents. He drank while reading, setting the cup down on the desk between legal briefs and correspondence. Brill made a show of checking the air filter, then moved to the window unit on the opposite wall. This put him behind the taster, out of the judge's line of sight. The taster began preparing the next pot of tea. Through the office window, Brill could see across the Pearl River Delta to the lights of Hong Kong. Somewhere in that grid of illumination, CIA operatives were waiting for confirmation that Judge Chen Wei-Ming would never testify about the decisions he'd sold to Beijing. Clean, quiet, natural causes. Except, Judge Chen wasn't going to die of natural causes tonight. Movement in the corridor outside caught Brill's attention. 3 men in dark suits, moving with the particular kind of purpose that came from government training. They spoke in Mandarin, but their body language was universal. Intelligence operatives closing in on a target. Chinese MSS. Ministry of State Security. Carver's voice crackled through the earpiece. "Brill, we have a problem. Chinese intelligence is moving on Chen's location. Multiple teams, heavily armed." The judge looked up from his documents. "Who are those men in the corridor?" Liu appeared in the doorway, nervous sweat beading on his forehead. "Judge Chen, we have visitors from Beijing. They're asking about your recent activities." Chen's face went pale. He knew what visits from Beijing meant for corrupt judges. The taster stepped forward. "Perhaps we should leave through the private elevator." "No." Chen stood up, his judicial robes billowing around him like dark wings. "I won't run from them. I've been preparing for this day for 20 years. He opened a desk drawer and pulled out a small pistol. Old but well-maintained. The kind of weapon a man kept for final gestures. "Judge," Liu said. "Please. There are other options. The only option is dignity." Chen looked at Brill. "You Maintenance worker. Get out of here. This doesn't concern you. Brill moved toward the door, but the MSS agents were already in the outer office. He could hear them questioning the receptionist, demanding access to Chen's private files. The judge walked to the window overlooking the casino floor, 40 stories below. 30 years on the bench. 30 years of making decisions that affected millions of lives. And it ends like this. He raised the pistol to his temple. Wait, Brill said. Chen turned, surprised to hear English from the maintenance worker. You don't want to do that, Brill continued. Not with Chinese intelligence watching. They'll make sure your family pays for your cooperation with the Americans. My family is already dead to me. But not to them. The MSS agents entered the office, weapons drawn. The lead agent spoke in Mandarin, demanding that Chen surrender immediately. Chen looked at the agents, then at the pistol in his hand, then at the window overlooking Macau. I lived like a coward, he said in English. I won't die like one. He pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed through the office like thunder. Chen collapsed behind his desk, blood pooling on the legal documents he'd spent 30 years corrupting. The MSS agents rushed forward, but it was too late. Judge Chen Wei-Ming was dead by his own hand, taking his secrets with him into whatever came after. Brill backed toward the service door, while the agents secured the scene. In the confusion, a maintenance worker was invisible. He slipped into the corridor and made his way to the freight elevator. The casino floor was chaos when he reached ground level. Police sirens wailed outside, but inside the Golden Palace the games continued. Baccarat dealers shuffled cards while their customers threw money at probability. Slot machines chimed their electronic songs, while security guards herded curious onlookers away from the VIP elevators. Brill walked through it all like a ghost, just another face in the crowd of gamblers and tourists and people whose luck had run out. Outside, the Macau night felt cooler after the casino's recycled air. He walked 2 blocks before calling for extraction. Package is neutralized, he told Carver. Natural causes? You could say that. Target eliminated himself, rather than face Chinese interrogation. Clean? Clean enough. MSS will report it as suicide to avoid international complications. CIA gets what they wanted. Chen can't testify about selling judicial decisions to Beijing. Brill caught a taxi to the ferry terminal. The last boat to Hong Kong left in 20 minutes, but he'd be on it. By morning, Judge Chen Wei-Ming would be a memory, and the Golden Palace Casino would be looking for a new owner. The taxi pulled away from the curb, leaving the neon dragons to coil around their glass tower. In the distance, police lights flashed like dying stars. Chen had been right about one thing. 30 years of corruption had ended in a single moment of clarity. But clarity, Brill knew, was just another word for seeing the truth too late to change it. The ferry terminal appeared ahead, all concrete and fluorescent lighting, and the promise of clean water between Macau and whatever came next. Brill paid the taxi driver and walked toward the boat that would carry him back to Hong Kong. Behind him, the Golden Palace Casino blazed against the night sky like a monument to greed. But monuments, like judges, eventually crumbled under the weight of their own corruption. The ferry's horn sounded across the Pearl River Delta, calling passengers to board. Brill walked up the gangway and found a seat near the stern where he could watch Macau disappear into the darkness. Judge Chen Wei-Ming was dead, but the decisions he'd sold would outlive him by decades. Justice, Brill reflected, was like gravity. It eventually pulled everything down to its proper level. The ferry's engines rumbled to life, and they moved out into the dark water between territories, between old corruption and new possibilities, between the neon dragons of Macau and the steel towers of Hong Kong waiting across the delta like promises written in light.